Hi there, welcome back everyone. Here we are, back on time. Perfect. Remember the hashtag, boom, ProtoPlay. Use it on social media, share the live stream, give exposures to some amazing developers and some amazing teams. And remember the socials, yeah? There is our Twitter, we got our ProtoPlay Discord, and we got the ProtoPlay website where you can, by the way, you can vote for your favorite team. The audience's favorite team will be decided. I'm sure it will be soon after, or sometime during the ProtoPlay, anyways. Okay, on with the next team. I'm gonna be interviewing a team member from Indie Shark Games. So, without further ado, let's go. Bum, bum. Here we go. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly fine. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm amazing, thank you.
Brilliant.
So, here we go, huh?
Yeah, so this is Project Outbreak. We are Indie Shark Games. I'm Nat, the team leader and programmer for Indie Shark Games, one of the programmers. We're a team of 4. We have another programmer who also helped implement the sound, that's Dean Holland. Lead artist on this project is Adam Fortley, and the character designer is Jason Morley.
Very nice. Perfect, thank you so much. Okay, so a bit about your game. What are we looking at? There is a lot of action. We see some shooting. We see some ammo. Plenty of enemies.
Yeah.
What's the core of your game? Before we get into no detail, just like in few words, what is your game?
So this is like a 3D third-person roguelike shooter type game. It's actually transitioned from being top-down to third-person quite recently, which has actually created, some like we've actually transitioned some of the mechanics and how they work and everything like that. But that was like a landslide decision from our community, which is great because I mean it just shows like the importance of our community and the fact they're giving us feedback has been amazing. So yeah, the roguelike shooter. And this is currently being played in mouse and keyboard, but it also has now controller support.
Awesome, perfect. Thank you so much. That's plenty. Don't worry. We'll get onto the detail. I'll throw some questions at you. Don't worry. About the inspiration, where did the idea for the project come from?
Oh, well, most of the team really love these type of games, roguelites. I personally love Enter the Gungeon, and that's where I took inspiration for most of the ideas for this game.
I see.
Yeah, spawning. So we intend to have like a lot of weapons in the game. That's the main like sort of inspiration drawn from Enter the Gungeon. And other games like which I suppose now are quite different to this, but like Binding of Isaac and Nuclear Throne. So it's fast-paced sort of roguelites.
Nuclear Throne is it's a great inspiration. I love that game personally. That's just something I wanted to throw out there. But this is gonna be like the third roguelike approach that teams are actually taking on their game, which I find interesting. Didn't expect it personally, but it's great to see. So maybe you could touch on the in-game mechanics. You mentioned a lot of weapons. I'm seeing a lot of dashing. Could you just expand on that?
Yeah, so what you're seeing right now is pretty much a vertical slice of what would be like a massive level. Typically, like in these games, they're procedure generated, so this is what it would end up being. And this is just one sort of area within a part of a level. So this is a cargo room. We start off in the one of the lab areas, but you sort of enter into a cargo room. And yeah, like saying the mechanics, that's the main thing we've been focusing on over the entirety of Transfuser, just nailing down those mechanics, ensuring that the people who are playing the game love the mechanics and they flow very well and work with one another. So the foundations of our game are basically the dash mechanic, which is a dash combo mechanic that basically when you go into one of the power-ups, it spawns another, and then that increases the effect of that power-up, say. So let's say if you got some ammo, you dash into it, then it spawn another one, which increase the effect of that ammo. Like so, it give you more ammo in that category. And then so you have like a little indicator showing you like what you've actually dashed into. And then so that's like one of the pillars. The other is the mad scientist. So he's like just purely sound based at the moment, so you'll just be commenting on your actions.
Mhm.
At the moment, he's quite annoying, and it's kind of the intention, but not like completely intention. We want him to sort of taunt the player, but we also want him to
I
hint
see.
at certain aspects of gameplay. Like if you're low on health, he'll be like mocking you about it. If you picked up a shield, he'll say that you're pathetic for trying to use a shield when it's
Ah,
you're supposed to be going hardcore and not using
I
shields.
see, I see.
So it's like a handsome Jack sort of approach from
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Borderlands 2, just like completely mocking the player, like developing this sort of I guess hatred or desire to sort of overcome this character, which will be the final boss in the game.
You
Um,
mentioned Borderlands 2. It's interesting because was Borderlands 2 perhaps inspiration for your lore approach, or is that just something you thought of now?
no, yeah, it's been inspiration for like a few things in the game, like the way in which you get the hit markers and stuff like that.
Mhm.
The the use of weapons, like so the weapon effectiveness in the game, you have your explosive weapon, which is another one of the pillars in the game. So you have your explosive weapon, your energy weapon, and your bullet weapon,
Mhm.
and each of these will have varying effectiveness depending on the enemy type. So for instance, fleshy enemies will be like susceptible to bullet and explosive weapons, like more so, and then where enemies with shields will be susceptible to the energy weapon. So it's like we tried playing in line with what other games have done, so
I
it's
see.
like more
Yeah.
intuitive to the player.
Mhm.
Um, and then you have so that's like sort of covering like three of the main ones, and then we have the final, I guess, foundation of the game, which is the sort of interactable, destructible environment.
Mhm.
So you could blow like bits of the environment apart, or use like say these containers to trap the enemies, or avoid certain containers. Like if you explode the doors open, you're going to unleash more enemies upon yourself.
Mhm.
And that's just for this particular example of being in the cargo room in different sort of themes, which we'll progress onto in the future, like more lab oriented, or you may have like a particular biome where it's like grassy or more fire based, because it's experimenting with all these different elements,
Mhm.
which is sort of what you'd expect in a sort of lab, which is where the whole game is based.
I see. So entire game would be based in a lab, but that doesn't, like you said, doesn't limit your day design because the lab consists of many things, right? It's a lab. It has different environments, right?
Yeah.
Just wanted,
Um,
yeah, go on,
oh,
go
go
on.
on. No. I would. It's fine. Go.
Sure. If you ever would need to say something, just go for it. Um, I was just gonna touch on the dashing ability, because my understanding is that there is a dash, right? If it's a roguelike. How is the player restricted from perhaps spamming it, or is he actually, do you incentivize the player to be able to use it whenever he wants?
Right. Yeah. So currently, the dash mechanic is limited to a slight cooldown. Like you got these little arrows on the top left part of the HUD, which indicate it's sort of fill up. And then once you dash into one power up, it will reset it completely, so you can like sort of use it to get to the next one, and that's how you sort of help you traverse from one power up to the next in the sort of power up mechanic.
I see.
That is the one element in the game that we're still in working on, because I'm not completely sold on it sort of how it complements the other gameplay mechanics, and I want to make sure that all the fundamentals like sort of work harmoniously before we pursue developing any like more of the game, because otherwise we're just gonna have to keep sort of redoing things to sort of accommodate for the mechanics. So yeah, that's the one thing at the moment where we just want to sort of improve upon. But currently it just works as you get the dash. You can use the dash whenever you want, but then you have to wait for the cooldown or dash into, like you're seeing, power-ups to reset it.
A bit more about those power-ups, so I grasp the idea better. Why would the player want to dash into all three of them, and how often does the player get that opportunity within the levels?
Okay, so the power-ups come like every few enemies. It's like sort of builds up based on like the number of so it's kind of a charge. In terms of like if you kill a few enemies, then it'll pop up based on like the number you've killed. The particular power-up that spawns, it's in like a weighted system. So it's slightly random, but it's sort of weighted towards what you need the most. So you might not necessarily get that one, but if you're lucky enough, you will. And then, so for instance, like you dash into the first one. For the moment, it's random, so that could be that pops up there, and you could dash into it. then that would present you with some ammunition, or it could be a shield or health. And then dashing into consecutive power-ups that are spawned from that one would sort of just increase the effect. So you just have you just get more health from it. Like you say, the first one you dash into gives you 30% increase in health, and then the rest would give you an extra 20% on top of that, and an extra 20% on top of that.
Okay. So mechanically, I suppose with enemies trying to get to you, essentially how difficult is it to collect all 3 power-ups? What's the mechanic player needs to bear with mind when those spawn?
So yeah, they need to have open space, using the dash and the power-ups, going from one to the other has a sort of slightly damaging explosive force towards some enemies. But it can be quite difficult, which is the reason why we're still playing around with it. The initial intention was to have the power-up spawn in a way that helps you traverse the levels and get away from enemies. But we're considering playing around with a completely different way in which the dash mechanic works. I could talk about that if you want, but it's quite different to how it works now.
You can give us some insights. Yeah, I would appreciate it, actually.
So, because the way they spawn is quite, well, like I said, it wasn't very complementary to the gameplay, so it's quite difficult to get them at times. So I was thinking about having these sort of power panels around the level, scattered around the level, and then they would present you with showing you exactly what sort of power up you can get from that. And then by shooting the enemies, that would be the sort of combo in which you rack up combo from killing enemies, and then that would, sort of be I guess a hot meter, if that makes sense. In terms of you, the more you kill, the more it goes up, but then as soon as you stop, it starts to go down. And then by dashing onto these power-up panels, then they're in a fixed location, so you can orientate yourself around those to sort of get the power-ups instead of being completely caught by surprise by one just spawning in.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. Right. Back onto the some of the bigger questions I've got for you. Thank you very much for giving us the insight. That's much appreciated. Since we touched on this one dashing mechanic quite a lot, is there anything else, or what's in the game at the moment that you're just the happiest with, the best element in your opinion?
Oh, well, I was really excited to see the voices go in, but they're not fully implemented to the way I want them to be right now. So in terms of sound, I'm really loving the sound made for the level, which was made by one of our contractors, Mark Fabian. He's like a musical genius. He's done some really good work on the sounds. I think he's probably working right now as we speak. I'm just really impressed with what he's done in terms of that. But I guess overall, everything that the team have done, what they've achieved in the time period of Transfuser, has been amazing.
I see. Well, very nice. That's great to hear. What about any changes? Is there anything you would want to, moving forward, you would want to change from the concept, or just expand on what you got? Of course, we discussed the dashing and how you are trying to implement that. So maybe something apart from that.
Yeah. So the dashing is one. I'd say it's just sort of refining those fundamental mechanics, and then I think I'd be happy once that is sorted, and also integrating the controls to be more nicer towards the player, because when we transitioned to incorporate more of the controller support, we noticed that it was much nicer to play on controller after having much amazing feedback from a lot of the other Transfuser teams that tested the game and our own community. So we tried with controller, and it was oh, this is great. So I made the controls for the game on controller, and then I was using mouse and keyboard. I was like, this isn't that good anymore. I don't like it as much. So I think we're gonna have to work a lot on the making it more intuitive to mouse and keyboard now, considering originally it was meant for top down. So the dash mechanic isn't as intuitive. You don't get that easy sort of feel of just going straight to where it's supposed to have spawned. With the angle involved, it kind of creates this awkwardness. So I'd like to eradicate that and just keep testing. As soon as we got the fundamentals down, and we're really happy with those, I'd be happy to start creating larger levels, making the levels procedure generated, and then expanding, to go to the bosses and well, that's in the long run. But
I see. Well, speaking of long run and having bosses, etc. We got a question in the chat saying, the gameplay looks awesome and fun, but what is the progression system?
Right. So at the moment, like typically with a roguelite, it's not like exhibiting many of the sort of characteristics of sort of expanding on the player, what the player has. So like I say, we were focusing on the fundamentals, but once they're sorted, we plan to have like many weapons within the game that you can sort of acquire as you go through. As you progress through the levels, the quality of the weapons would be better in terms of like what like the damage output and like the way in which they work. But we really wanted it to be like wacky in the terms of how they work as well. Like that's what I loved about Enter the Gungeon. You was excited about the weapons that you'd acquire because you just want to see like how they'd sort of interact with the levels.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I want to take a like approach with our game.
I see.
But then again, like with roguelikes, there's so many things. So I'd like it to the start of the levels have this sort of test tube character selection system. I'll go into too much detail, but it's pretty much what you'd expect. You get to sort of like customize your character, and then through playthroughs, you'd find secrets and various other things that the scientist alludes to and talks about and tries to hint in towards. And by unlocking those, you get to obviously customize your character and in various ways before you start playing.
Am I right in saying that the scientist, the real protagonist of the game, really feels like it's the player? So anyone who plays, it's like the character is almost like a template for the player to get into their shoes, and then the scientist helps them immerse themselves, that they are like almost in that world, being that protagonist.
Yeah, I guess so, because we haven't got any visuals of the scientist yet, but our intentions is in making, that face that people connect with is going to be the scientist.
I see.
The like, sort of the constant within the game is going to be the scientist, and you're going to be able to customize your own character throughout based on what you can acquire.
I see.
So yeah,
pretty much got that. Yeah. About enrolling on Transfuser and changes or any alterations you had to make to your project, and maybe if you could then expand if any of those changes were influenced by the Transfuser and the ProtoPlay community.
Yeah, we had a big decision to make at the start of Transfuser. We sort of caught off guard because we thought it was starting a week later, and then turns out it already started. And it was like, oh god, no. Yeah. Yeah, we had already started Project Outbreak a while ago, but we wasn't really happy with how it had developed. We'd focused on, like I say, we took inspiration from the other games, and we just started implementing features on top of features, and it didn't really have a core like the fundamentals to it, which is exactly why we're spending so much time making sure that's right before we carry on. So we had to make the decision of basically sort of scrapping the last project and sort of, essentially revamping a few of the features and like using some of the code and like one or two, I guess, design aspects. So yeah, starting Transfuser was pretty much felt like starting a new project, but with like, I guess, a kickstart.
I see.
So did I answer the question?
Yeah, no, pretty much. Very much so. What about the impact from the community, like once you joined? Like were there the changes that you've had suggested maybe by other teams or people you managed to network with because of Transfuser and ProtoPlay?
Yeah, that was actually a massive influence. All the other teams that actually helped sort of played our game and gave feedback were it was a massive influence on the game. And that's exactly why we transitioned from top down to third person, and also made sure that the controller support was there, because a lot of people started playing with controller, and I was like, oh my god, this game doesn't even have controller support. So yeah,
I see. Yeah, good to have one. Good to have that in there. Well, thank you for that. What about the target audience? Of course, it's a roguelike, so we would be looking at those players as well. But you'll, just as many other teams, you are taking your own twist on the roguelike. Could you maybe specify, is there some niche target market you are aiming for with that?
In terms of like target market, we just aim for like 12 plus. Like we set it as 12 to 30, but I guess it's more just 12 plus. And in terms of like the market research, we were using we still have to use planning, sorry, fairly soon to go to use Facebook analytics and sort of get more research from there in order to sort of gauge more of our target market, so we can then focus on a particular market in terms of when we do our marketing. But yeah, it was just more like the roguelike communities. It was actually a surprise because when we did the release the earlier version at an event before COVID hit, we found like a significant number of younger players playing the game, and we intended it to be quite brutal. So we were sort of getting worried about like whether they could actually play the game. So we kept asking parents and stuff, like, are you sure you want them to play this game? And they were like, yeah, it's fine. So yeah, it was a bit confusing at that point, like knowing like what target audience to sort of approach. I think in general it is just the roguelike community.
I see. You mentioned sort of that you were intending for your game to be much more brutal. Did you have to sort of tune it down a bit in those regards, or were you not at the stage where you had to reverse anything because you haven't gone that route in depth enough in terms of development?
Yeah, that was like the older version, like the non-revamped version. I don't think we'd gone far enough down that route to sort of like worry about it too much. But yeah, I think it's less of a problem now. I think with the sort of graphics are more like sort of fun in terms like they was quite realistic and grimy before, and I think like now in comparison they're quite like fun and sort of, I guess, stylized.
Yeah, certainly, I can see that. Have you had, so you mentioned you had feedback about the camera angle, and then of course you saw a lot of feedback from the younger audience. How did that impact your development apart from what we've heard? Was there anything that made you rethink what you've had planned and sort of make those changes?
No, not really. I mean, we've had like a few like ideas and stuff from our community, and that's something we always love to hear and consider in the future of the development. No, I think other than those few that I've already highlighted, it's pretty much been like not really. Yeah.
So you're just sticking to your guts and your scope.
Yeah, I mean, we really want to be sort of like get the community involved as much as we can. So we give them options to sort of give their ideas. Always open to feedback because that's like really important to us. But yeah, ideas. We'd love to hear people's ideas. We have one particular like a very enthusiastic community member. He's always giving us feedback, and that's exactly what we want. He even drew us a picture in one of the older versions of the game of like one of our enemies, which is yeah, it's just like so inspiring when you see something like that. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. Absolutely, we are here to hear the insights from you. Yeah, that's great. No, community can always greatly influence or help developers like see what's working, so we can like double down on it and really go that route.
Yeah.
Could you just take me through the level design? You mentioned other environments, but from what we are looking at right now, so I suppose this would be like a starting area of the lab, or is that further into the game?
So what you were seeing just then was, yeah, it was the starting area of the lab, but it's it was just like the vertical slice purposes of just starting somewhere. It's not fully implemented yet as like the proper starting location. Yeah, so our intentions would be to sort of further expand on that starting area and have it so you actually come out of one of the test tubes at the start of the game, showing that you've pretty much just been, I guess, created.
I see. Okay. Cool. Very nice. I think we're coming to a close of the interview. Is there anything else you would like to touch on? We still got a bit of time, so feel free.
Let's have a look.
Oh, actually,
yeah.
you can talk. Sorry, before we get to hold to the thought, please. But could you just talk about enemies, actually? We haven't discussed those.
Yeah, so I mean, I think from what I'm seeing here is we got the aliens, which is crazy. A crazy sort of input we had from the our character artist. We was originally going for just stuff that you'd make in a lab, but then we thought like, why not just put literally anything that's sort of like, just absolutely destructive or like, because aliens. I didn't consider them before, but then it kind of makes sense to have them in the lab because it's exactly like what you'd experiment on.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're like sort of the foot soldiers. Then you have the swarm enemy types, which is sort of the more fleshy, easy to kill, and you have the brute. And those were the three we wanted to put into the demo at least to sort of showcase the use of the different weapons.
I see.
Also alongside with the use of adding shields upon whichever. In this case, it's the grunts, which are the aliens.
The grunts are aliens. I think this, what I'm gonna ask just now, I think it's self-explanatory, but would you be considering tailoring the enemies towards every zone and every level, or are they just like tied to the laboratory lore and they are just gonna remain very similar at least throughout each environment?
Yeah, we was actually thinking about tailoring them to the environments. So in this particular environment, it was meant for mainly the brute that you're seeing. He'd be contained within some of the containers, and just basically you have to tread carefully when going around and shooting. Make sure you don't shoot the wrong areas because you're just going to make your life hell. But then in other areas, you'd see variations of the enemies you'd seen before, but let's say if you were in a fiery aspect environment, you'd see where they've been experimented on. They have elements of fire within that. Yeah, so that's something we really wanted to pursue. We've got, I think, 11 enemies in total planned.
That's awesome. Awesome. Very nice to hear. Well, since you are on the topic of planning into the future, what is the plan for the future then? Post transfuser, what's the big picture for your team?
So from what we've got planned currently, we're expecting the game to be sort of released around mid 2020. 2022. But the thing is, I think we're one of the unique cases where we've actually not finished university yet. Three of our team members, who was on an enterprise placement year last year, and that's why we're taking part. So we have to actually go back into university and sort of take that into account. So development's going to be fairly slow over the next few months because the module that we was tying our production into doesn't actually start till next year. So everything is on top of what we've already got on our workload for university.
I see.
But
That's
after
fully
that,
understandable, yeah.
yeah. But after that, we intend to get more people on board through university in the areas that we need sort of to expand our team on, the 2D side of the game for the HUD and sort of promotion, stuff like that.
I see.
Yeah.
Awesome. So was it 2022 when you would be looking to give a release?
Yeah, mid 2022 or early 2022, depending on how things go.
I see. There we go. That's a date to keep, guys. Mark it on your calendar. Just circle the whole month. Right. Thank you so much. Would you like to give any shout-outs to anyone or further expand on anything? I've linked all of your socials in the chat.
Oh, that's great.
You guys got their website. There is Discord, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit. Just you might as well just Google Indie Shark Games and you'll get whatever you need.
Yeah. Shout out. That'd be great. To the team, obviously, they've done some amazing work, and Mark Fabian, he's the sound designer. And then to the mentor that we've had, Gary, because he's just been absolutely amazing in just giving us regular feedback, and the facilitator. If I can say it, Tara, and yeah, just to the whole community, all the people that's actually helped out in production so far.
Awesome, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for chatting to me and showing your game. It was wonderful to get some insights into yet another very fresh take on a roguelike game. So it was very nice to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Take care.
You too.
Now, guys, we are done with Indie Shark games, and up next is gonna be Off-Brand. And we're gonna check out what they got in store for us. But before that, a short break so you can go stretch your limbs, get some snacks, get some drinks, and get right back. See you soon.